Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Scoreboard Media. Scoreboard Media works with high schools across the country to run professional sponsorship programs on their LED scoreboards. Whether you already have LED and you just want to supercharge the revenue, or you want to use sponsorship revenue to buy new LED video scoreboards, Scoreboard Media can help. They work with sponsors and advertisers locally, regionally, and nationally who want to connect with your school's community. Email info@scoreboardmedia.com to start the conversation and see what's possible. Coach, wanted to ask you about characteristics of great coaches or leaders. Hard to limit it to three, but if you could choose three, what do you think those would be?
Yeah, definitely. It's a tough one. I think it all starts with relationship building. You got to be able to connect with a young man, and that doesn't mean you got to be his buddy all the time, but it means he's got to know that you care about him. He's got to know that you have his best interest at heart. And so if you can, what's the saying? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so
Yep.
I'd say number one, you got to start by, a great coach can build relationships with his players. From there, I would say he's got to be a truth teller. The ability to make sure that, especially today, how little players probably hear the truth from other influences, and that you've got to be, and I think it's one of the great displays of love. I can look at somebody and tell them a hard truth, knowing that, feelings might get a little bit hurt and he may not be happy with me, but just the ability to be a truth teller. And then the third thing is just consistent accountability. We were just kind of talking about the grind, but it's, I've got to tell somebody the truth. I got to hold them accountable every day, and it's got to be 1 through 15 or 1 through 12 or 1 through 50, whatever my program is. I can't have I think great coaches don't have different standards. I'll be perfectly honest with you. My highest standards are for my best players. At least when we're going to be good, I can coach my best players the hardest. And I know a lot of coaches talk about that. But if I had to narrow it to three, I think those are the three that would jump out at me.
I like those three. I think we're very much alike in those three, the way you looked at it. And starting with relationships, and you said not friends. I was just thinking, I think it's really important, especially for younger coaches, is not to look for friendship. Friendship, if it happens later on in life, that's pretty cool. But even then, they need to know that you're there for them. And I'm sure you're the same way. If a player finishes the program in good standing at Faith, then they're pretty much stuck with me for the rest of their life. And I ask one thing of all of my players, only one after they graduate, is that they invite me to the wedding. And it's happened for most of them, and hopefully more and more. But I think that friend area, what it does is it handcuffs you. If you care too much about the way that they like you or feel about you, then we may shy away from telling the truth and shy away from some of those hard conversations. What are some of those ways that you can build relationships with your players, but not let it cross over into that friend zone?
No, great question. I think the before and after practice is probably the easiest. Just getting out there and I've got a new staff this year, and so it's very important that those guys get to know our guys, but just as important, our players get to know their coaches. And so just getting out before practice starts, whether it's, shooting around, talking to them about a college football game on Saturday, just kind of getting to know them in those situations. And then, when it's between the lines, when it's time to go, we're going. That doesn't mean that we can't, have a friendly conversation. It's just for our practice, the pace of how we're going, there's not a lot of time for that. Right. And then after practice, I want that kid to know. And a lot of times if I've had to be pretty tough with a kid throughout the course of practice, as soon as we're done and we're breaking out for the day and getting our reminders, I'm probably calling them over, kind of explaining why we did what we did, and then maybe even changing it to a casual conversation. So I think those are the best times that you can do it, and then just through the course of when you go out of town for a tournament, which we do, or you're at a tournament, you have some time where we're eating and talking, So kind of the away from business hours, I think, are the best way to build relationships. But even then, I think you mentioned young coaches. I think it's important the types of conversations I'm having. I mean, I'm having friendly conversations, but I'm not getting down on a 16-year-old level and talking about things that might cross the line that they're going to talk about in the locker room. And I think that's important to understand. We're not bad mouthing other coaches on campus. We're not talking crap about we're talking noise about other teachers. We're being professional, but I'm able to have more of a casual conversation.
Man, I think those are really good reminders and great ideas to continue to look for those informal times to have conversation with players. I do believe in meeting with players one-on-one and having that be a scheduled thing. It doesn't have to be for very long. I actually took something from Tyron Lee from Frisco Wakeland years ago at a coach's little round table we had at the Colony with Coach Ryan, and he talked about us. Borrowed that from him at 10 minutes, asked five questions for 5 minutes, and then they ask questions for 5 minutes. Nothing's off the table, and it's timed, and it's boom, boom, and we're out. But the amount of stuff we're able to get through in those 10 minutes and it's scheduled is huge. Like, I think that stuff's really important. But then what we can't do is have our heads down because of all the things that we have going. Maybe we have practice starting in a little bit, and a kid walks through the gym by himself. Man, that is, and if you're a believer, maybe that's God putting that person in that gym for that moment for you to reach out and have that quick one-on-one. Like, I think our eyes have to be up. Like, we want our players to peak when they play. Like, we have to have our eyes up, ready for those informal conversations, because you can see a lot too with the nonverbal communication that a kid has. As he slumped over a little bit more, is his head down? Maybe you even know that he's having a tough day, and man, steal some of those conversations when you can.
Oh, that's a great reminder. I mean, I know I have to remind myself because as you said, I'm getting ready for practice. I'm walking out there. I'm thinking, is all the equipment out here? Is the clock ready to go? Has the floor been swept? Who's got the wrong colored socks on? Who's not here? And so my mind is racing, and I've noticed before I've literally walked right past a kid and not even acknowledged their existence.
Yeah, we've all done that. Yeah.
How terrible. You're that kid, and your first interaction with coach is going to be a negative because he walked right past me, and he walks past me, and I'm thinking, what did I do yesterday that coaches me? And so those little things can be corrected simply by what you just said, getting my eyes up, being aware of my surroundings, see the floor. I love that.
Yeah, this is just something else I thought about, because trying to think of ways that we can create more of these interactions, because very easy, either at an open gym or right before an athletic period, guys are trickling into the gym, getting going, and then you can, once that buzzer hits, you can just start coaching, and they're there, but you haven't had any touches or anything, and if a goal of yours is to get say everybody's name, I've heard that before. I think that's a good goal. To get a positive touch with every kid, I think that's a good goal. To help with it, I think a good idea is set the standard of when they walk into the gym, the first thing they do is find you. Put it on the players that they have to come and find you, and we give a fist bump. I ask them how they're doing, but it's not me actively trying to get everybody. They're coming here, and it's not like I don't know. I don't want to make that sound weird. Like, you must come talk to me, and then I will. But it helps me not miss anybody. And if the expectation is, I want to see you, I want to talk to you, I think that helps them build that relationship a little bit more.
I love that. I think especially as today's time is, where kids are probably, I don't want to say socially awkward, but so much of the communication is through technology. Yeah. The fact that you're making them or you're having them seek another human being out to reach out to them first. I think that's a great lesson.
and I'll get off of any of my stories because this is about you, so I apologize. But then I would jokingly say to some of them, like, Holt was a kid that he would walk by or walk in, and he never really caught on to that. And so if I realized, I'd say, Holt, man, do we have a problem? Like, are we okay? And he'd smile and he'd come over. Yeah, coach, we're okay. I was like, well, you didn't come say hello, man. So I just got worried and like make it in a joking way. But I think that it started to work with him of like, I don't want him to think we have a problem because I didn't come over there. But I don't know, though. I think the more creative we can get with not just the formal meetings, but the informal ones, and creating that culture of like, the best thing for me as your coach is to get to see you every day, and not be fake about that, but and have them feel it. And then my last thing, and you mentioned it, you nailed it, is we got to be intentional with building these relationships, because they won't happen by accident. And to base our coaching or building relationships on hope is bad formula.
No, I mean, without a doubt. And I would say the times I've been at my best, that word that you used, I'm intentional, and the times where I look up and we're rocking down the road and it's a little bumpy and something's going on, I realize I haven't been intentional about some of those things. And so, and it gets harder, the more, the longer you go, the older you get. If you have some success, people want you and need you, and that's that's good that you can help other people. But at the same time, I got to remember why I'm here. I'm for those dudes out there on the court, and so I want to take time for other coaches and people like that. But at the end of the day, I got to make sure I'm back and making the first things first.
See, Coach, I think all you have to do is be insignificant, like me. Nobody can. Nobody comes to the gym. Nobody comes to my study hall. No, and so I have tons of time. And then you've got guys from DFW just wanting to take hours of your day. And no, but I think you're right on the money. And just from a teaching perspective, like if that is what you do, I mean, you can have your day planned out, but we all know that there are going to be invaders that come, and good things sometimes that happen, but people do need you. People need things answered. And all of a sudden that plan you had, man, I wanted to meet with these three guys. Golly, I just ran out of time. It's tough.
Right. No doubt. When you mentioned it, as a believer, you got to be receptive to the Spirit. You got to hear those things first and foremost. And when that drives your day, then it seems like things go much smoother.
Yeah, that's a good call. You said consistent with accountability. I think that's hard. Like, I think the struggle is we start out with standards, and then obviously the players are naturally wanting to stretch and do their own thing. Or, I mean, just as people, golly, if there's a speed limit, yeah, I can go 5 to 10 over that. Like, I could get away with that. I'm not, we're the same as them. But for us as those standard bearers, holding the consistency, holding the accountability, how do you do that throughout a year?
And I think I got to have my own standard. I got to understand, everything's important for us. Everything is important, and I think men need boundaries. Especially men need boundaries, and especially young men need boundaries. And that's one of my responsibilities, is to help them understand is 2 inches over the boundary is just as bad as 2 yards over the boundary. And so I'm here to help you understand, discipline yourself so one day others won't have to. And I think that's part of my job. And so I think togetherness is obviously so important. And if I got Jimmy that looks up and Joey's not being held to the same standard that he is, then obviously there's going to be some animosity towards me, but a divide is then created in the locker room. And so am I consistent? If I say it to one person, am I saying it to everybody? Is the same thing. If we're tucking our shirts in, are we tucking our shirts in every day? If my best player doesn't have his shirt tucked in, what am I going to do about it? If my best player doesn't block out, what am I going to do about it? And so, I think just being consistent every day, and eventually we adapt to the boundary. What they put when they had the.
And I think maybe one of the ways that we don't become friends with our players, or the level of care doesn't get to the point where we start to maybe sacrifice, is on those standards. So maybe a question a coach or younger coach or anybody would ask, like, well, how often do I have to hold the line? How often do I have to remind them? The answer is every stinking day, every day. And you don't compromise. But the moment, and compromise in that, like, let's say if Saturday practices are a habit for you, and that's something that your guys do all the time, compromising doesn't mean like giving them something, giving them a Saturday off. Like after a big district win and a Saturday off, I think that can be one of the things that just refreshes in that moment of time where you talked about the grind. But that's different than couple jerseys aren't untucked, I'll give them grace today. No, I think that's slippage that you can't afford because it'll become something bigger.
No, you're the roar and eruption.
Let that hurt your feelings, coach, right there.
So no, you're right. That's it's important to understand that, rewarding or taking a break or changing something, that's not slippage. And so that's a good point.
Coach, there's a really good flow with those three characteristics that you said, because if you're about relationships, then you're going to tell the truth. And when you're telling the truth, then that's the accountability that they need. But I also think that that's a pretty good culture for a program. And I've never really thought about that. Do characteristics of great coaches, are those also things that great cultures have in common? And maybe they do.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.